Aaron Rodgers is an all-time great player. He's one of the best players, not just in Packers history, but in NFL history. And he has defined Green Bay Packer football for the last decade plus. All of that is true. And it is still the case that now is the time for the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers to part ways.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Today's episode brought to you by BetOnline. All of the sports and gambling info you need, all of that at BetOnline, where the game starts. Joel Corry is on the show today. Former NFL agent. He knows salary cap and contracts way better than I do, because that stuff is really nuanced. There's a reason you have to go to school to understand it. It is crazy. We are going to talk about the Aaron Rodgers contract, the situation, and what the options are for Green Bay in some greater detail. That ties in perfectly with the way I want to start the show. And that is, it's time for the Packers and Aaron Rodgers to part ways. Now, if Aaron Rodgers does not want that, if he wants to stay in Green Bay, if he thinks that's the best thing for him, it becomes difficult for the Packers, because no one wants to trade for Aaron Rodgers without an assurance he will play for them. So the mechanics of the trade I want to set aside for the moment. Let's start with why this is the moment to do it. We're going to talk about the contract and the nuances of it and why all of the little details are the way that they are. I wrote about this for The Leap. But here's what it comes down to. It is only $9 million more. And I say only because we're talking about relative money. It is only $9 million more on the cap to trade Aaron Rodgers this offseason than it would cost to keep him. Okay? So that money is going to be there no matter what. You are going to get something of value for Aaron Rodgers this year. And you get to start the clock on Jordan Love, a quarterback in whom you have put considerable resources, and who Brian Gutekunst said, we think this guy is an NFL starter. If you think Jordan Love is an NFL starter, then now is the time, because we have, I think, reached that equilibrium where Jordan Love plus stuff and plus time is a better asset than Aaron Rodgers. That was not the case last year. And I think this was an important piece, that it made sense to me, not to everyone, but to me, to say Aaron Rodgers is playing at an MVP level. If the Packers get that version of Aaron Rodgers, they can be a Super Bowl contender in 2022. The betting markets thought that, the odds makers thought that, the general public thought that, and a lot of people in sports media thought that, a lot of Packer fans thought that, and a lot of fans around the NFL thought that. It's not what happened, because Aaron Rodgers didn't play well enough. He got hurt. And I think we misunderstood or underestimated how much Davante Adams, I mentioned this the other day, as a bucket getter, impacted this offense. Okay. The other part of this, the timing part of it, is if you run it back and you try and do this again, next offseason, you are way less than, I think, 50-50 of Aaron Rodgers playing in 2024. And if he doesn't, the cap number goes up considerably. He costs way more money if he retires next year than he does if he retires this year. That's weird, but that's the way that the contract is structured. And we're going to get into it with Joel Corry to explain exactly why that is. It's weird. It's nuanced. But in view of that, this contract, and I know that Aaron Rodgers thought, oh, this is written as year to year, that kind of thing. Andrew Brandt mentioned this. The way that this is structured, it actually makes this offseason the potential pivot point. This is the time when you decide. And so for the Packers, in a way, this is the perfect time to decide, because if it were last year, and they had a pivot point last year because they had to extend him, right? But they wrote it so that if after a year they needed to get out of it, they could. That's where they are right now. And if they wanted to do a trade next year, they could. You're eating way more money, and you're going to get probably considerably less stuff. Like if the price today is not yesterday's price, or yesterday's price is not today's price, whatever the quote is. Dang it, I screwed that up. They could have gotten more for Aaron Rodgers last year coming off an MVP campaign than they could this year. And this year, they can get more than they could get next year. They can still get real good stuff for Aaron Rodgers, I'm telling you. Carson Wentz was traded for a conditional first-round pick. Was terrible. Okay, it wasn't terrible, but was not good, and got multiple day 2 picks from Washington. For Carson freaking Wentz, this is Aaron Rodgers. He's worth a first-round pick to 30 NFL franchises just for the name on the back of the jersey, because they will sell, tens of thousands of those jerseys, and that's money in your pocket. He will put butts in seats in every stadium in the NFL. He's worth a first-round pick just for that. So the Packers can get something for him. The problem, if you want to June 1st and spread this money out, you can't trade him till after June 1st. And that means not getting assets this year for Aaron Rodgers. You'd have to wait till the 2024 draft. Well, that makes those assets less valuable, because then you don't get those assets with Jordan Love. So if you trade Aaron Rodgers in the next 100 days, you can use whatever draft capital you get to buoy the team around Jordan Love, and you're fast tracking his development a little bit, giving him a better opportunity to succeed, and giving the team, of course, a better opportunity to succeed. And you get a better view of who he is as a quarterback. The time is now. And the time is now, not just because of this passing water level, where you get to the point where it's actually more important now to not waste the opportunity to get Jordan Love on the field relative to having Aaron Rodgers. But it is also because if you wait, the actual penalty, the cost, we talk about opportunity cost, that is a sort of, it's an abstract concept. It's more nebulous. It's just the idea is, oh, well, you missed out on this opportunity to X. No. There is an actual cost to waiting. So there is an opportunity cost, and then the very real added cost of what it's going to cost next offseason if Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback and almost certainly retires. Now, you can post June 1 retire. That's what the Saints did with Drew Brees, and then you can spread it out, but you're still spreading out a huge chunk of money. And you basically have to eat what is the equivalent of this year's cap hit twice versus just this year. If you trade him this year, you eat that dead cap. It's over. You start fresh. And so all of this too, I think, is predicated on this idea of how close you think you are to winning a championship and what you think that is worth to you. So let's say you could think you can get DeAndre Hopkins or Brandon Cooks. Does that get you to a Super Bowl? Does that close that delta down when you have to make all these other decisions on other players like Adrian Amos and Dean Lowry and figuring out, okay, what's the situation in the secondary and what are you going to do with the offensive line and David Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones and Preston Smith and all these other guys? How can you make this team better? Is it just getting that S-tier receiver? Is that enough? And I don't know if Nuke is one of those anymore. So, where are you as a team? Where do you realistically think you can get to? I think the biggest mistake the Packers could make is thinking that just getting a receiver and running this back with Aaron Rodgers is enough. Right now, given the way that this team with these players played this past season, I don't think it is. Now, there could be terrific year two improvement, and Quay Walker could explode, and Devontae Wyatt could explode, and Christian Watson could turn into a bona fide superstar, and Romeo Doubs is a really nice player. That's asking a lot for what is almost certainly just one season. Whereas I could get value and be, I think, pretty good. I think, if you looked before the season, if you asked people how many games do you think you could win with Jordan Love? 8, 9? Guess what? They won 8 or 9. I think Jordan Love, and I asked this question on Twitter, a lot of fans think that if the Packers had just played Aaron Rodgers while he had a broken thumb, that the Packers would have won more games than they did with Aaron Rodgers with a broken thumb with Jordan Love. If the Packers think that, then this is a no-brainer. It's just done. Now, publicly, they haven't said that they want to do that. In fact, they've said the opposite. So we'll see if this is actually the conclusion that they come to. But to me, pragmatically, this is the way you want to handle this. This is the time. This is that inflection point. And you can accept all of the greatness that Aaron Rodgers has given this team and say, he was great. He was great. I have never enjoyed watching a player play football as much as I have enjoyed the quarterbacks of the last 30 years of the Green Bay Packers play football. Watching Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers is like one of the great joys of my life. But that doesn't mean it's not time. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know what success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experience to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates for your open jobs with targeting tools that go beyond resume data for using insights from your job post. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy for you to scan and rate applicants based on your hiring qualifications. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you got to try Built Bar. I had one today. My toddler didn't even let me finish it. He wanted to eat it, and he ate it gladly. He loves them. My wife loves them. My whole family. We are a Built Bar house, the Bukowskis. We love these things. We really do. And what's not to love? It's 100% real chocolate. The flavors are incredible. I've never had anything like it. And they continue to innovate. I go back to bars that when I first had them, last year, let's say, I was like, oh, this is the best. And then I have some of the new flavors and I'm like, what are those other ones? Who cares about those? These things are amazing. It really is remarkable to see what Built Bar has been able to do and still deliver on all the macros, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to order them online only. You can go to built.com and get Built Bars. I still do. But you can also go to Walmart and get them. You can go to Sam's Club and get them. You're doing your regular shopping. Hey, let me grab some Built Bars. You can thank me later. Joining me now, former NFL agent and a man who understands contracts and salary caps way better than I do, which is exactly why he's here, Joel Corry. And Joel, the thing about this Aaron Rodgers contract, and thank God you wrote this piece for CBS Sports explaining it, because I'm looking at it going, okay, how can it be possible that the dead cap accelerates in 2024 and is bigger? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. This is not how any other contract I've ever seen works. So I want to talk through a couple things. First, the mechanics of the deal, why you would structure it that way, and then what you think it ultimately means for this team. So let's just walk through this offseason. What is the situation with the cap in this contract this offseason for the Packers in terms of their options with Aaron Rodgers?
Well, he has a cap number of basically 31.6. That's how it's on the books. He's got these 2 option bonuses one in 2023 to pick up the 2025 year, second one in 2024 to pick up the 2026 year. The presumption is the options will be exercised. So when you talk about the cap number assumes the options will be exercised. There's a long window to exercise each of the options. The 2023 option reduces fully guaranteed $59.465 million salary to $1.165 million. Is first day of the league year till a day before the first regular season game in September. Normally, the window to exercise an option is the first to fifth day or first to third day of the league year. So if you exercise the option, you got to pay him a $58.3 million option bonus. And the option bonus is prorated on the cap for 4 years, 2023 through 2026, because you prorate through the option years. That's why the cap number is so low. The thing I've heard some people say that if you trade Aaron Rodgers, that the dead cap for Green Bay is going to be basically $99 million.
Right.
That's not the case because you're not exercising the option. The long window is to give a lot of latitude and leeway for him to retire, them to work out a trade as well, if that's what happens. And if you don't exercise the option, the new team is the one that assumes the option. So you only have, in terms of your dead money, would be the existing proration of about 7.3 from the previous contracts, and then the 32 and some change from the $40.8 million roster bonus that was fully guaranteed and prorated when you signed the deal last year. It is one of the more complicated contracts you will see that an NFL player will sign.
If the Packers were going to do a trade, just from like what makes sense for a new team, does it make sense for them to rework this deal, or is this something that you think, okay, we'll exercise the bonus, this gets spread out, and we can live because it's not a terrible cap number this year if they do it that way?
Yeah, the cap number for the new team is going to be 15.79.
Pretty good for Aaron Rodgers.
They're not going to have to deal with the proration from the option bonus. I mean, not the option bonus, the roster bonus from last year. That, I think it's $32.64 million for that roster bonus is all a Green Bay cap charge. It's just a question of the timing of the trade, whether it would be split over 2 years or all taken 1 year in full. But you'll start having the dead money problems, not to the same degree as the Packers, but you'd have them once you start exercising the options. This was done because Rodgers had all the leverage in the world in the contract. When they locked a year off of his contract, placate him, when he was talking about wanting out before the 2021 season, he had him over a barrel when he decided he wanted to stay. So they don't typically employ option bonuses like this in a Green Bay contract. Typically, a Green Bay contract is a huge signing bonus, and you have these March roster bonuses that aren't secured. Rodgers is the only one who's ever had guaranteed money and base salary in a Green Bay contract because that's just how they've done business. But you get Rodgers for a $15.79 million cap hit, $32.5 next year, and if I'm trading for Aaron Rodgers, I want assurances he's going to play at least 2 years.
Right.
And the draft choice compensation is going to be predicated on him playing more than 1 year. That it's going to be conditional. Like, I'll give you, I'm assuming, a first-round pick. Granted, he did regress from being the MVP the past 2 years. I guess there was no place to go but down. But this wasn't one of his better years statistically. But other picks would be predicated on him not retiring and being a 1 year guy and you surround him.
Yeah, I wonder if a trade in that situation would look something like the Carson Wentz deal, where it's like, here's the first, and then we'll give you other stuff if in 2024 he plays a certain amount of games or whatever it is. Like maybe they could work in some weirdness that way, although you wouldn't be able to get the draft pick before 2020. Like that would be complicated, right? To try.
Yeah, it's probably going to have some conditions on it. Part of it would be that he's not retiring; he's just going to
right.
But then another issue is how it's going to affect Green Bay's cap if you trade him, because any team that would trade for Aaron Rodgers isn't going to want to do it in the same time frame that happened with his predecessor, Brett Favre, which is right before training camp when he unretired. You're going to want him for as long as possible in the offseason. So you would think the outside timing for a trade would be before the draft, because presumably Green Bay would want some 2023 draft capital. But the problem with that is Rodgers is sitting on the cap at basically 31.6. If you have a trade before June 2nd, you can't split the $40.3 million in bonus and dead money you would have for not having him around this year. It's 40.3 what if he retires or if he's traded. But you'd have the 40.3 in 2023, and he's off the books after that, a trade before June 2nd. So that's going to add to complicated cap situation in Green Bay.
Yeah, and I think there is some misunderstandings that people are like, well, just do the trade post June 1. And it's like, no, well, you can cut someone with a post June 1 designation before June 1. You cannot, at least my understanding of it is, make a post June 1 trade before June 1. So like you couldn't do a post June 1 trade for draft capital in 2023 because the draft is before June 1st. And that's part of the complication here. So if there was going to be, go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is no such thing as a post-June 1 designation with trades. It only applies to the two players you can release once the league year starts. You're either going to do the trade before June 2nd, and you're going to take the dead money all in 2023, or you're going to do it post-June 1, and then the splits. You're going to have 24, I think, .48 million of dead money in 2024, and then basically 15.8 in 2023. So you would pick up significant cap room, 16 and some change, if you did the trade after June 1. But that's not going to be appealing to the acquiring team from a timing standpoint.
Right. And the Packers, you would think, would want those 2023 draft picks in this deal anyway. Like if you make a trade in June, any assets you acquire, unless it's a player for player trade, which has got its own complications, you're not going to be able to benefit from it in the short run. And that's probably what the Packers are thinking if they're going to do a trade like this. You want, whether it's, however many picks you are able to get or whatever, you want them now so that you can reset this clock and start moving forward. I want to ask you about the nuance of this that makes it so that if Rodgers is back, and he's back on a lower number than the dead cap money, like 31 million on the cap or thereabouts in 2023 if he plays. But then in 2024, any of the scenarios pre-June 1 where he is retired, cut, traded, all of a sudden that money is way more. Explain how that works and why that is.
That's the problem with the structure, because option bonuses are treated like signing bonus on the cap and they're prorated. So not only do you have that $40.8 million proration from the roster bonus, which is $8.16 million per year, 2022 to 2026, so you're contending with that. If you exercise the option and he stays and plays, then you're going to have $58.3 million that gets prorated 14.575 each year on the cap. Dead money in 2024, whether you trade him or he retires, is $68.205 million. There are no good options for Green Bay with Rodgers, just because then you have the next year another option. So let's say he plays through 2024, plays, then he's going to go into 2025. Let's say you exercise the second option, then you got 40 over 3 years, and that's like 15.6, and then that's going to move the dead money up to 76 if he retires in 2025. By then his trade value is diminished because unless he hits a fountain of youth like Tom Brady.
So, and I mentioned this on Twitter yesterday, and Andrew Brandt, who's longtime Packers executive, quote tweeted it and said, look, the reason this is structured this way is so that this is the inflection point. So if you're the Packers and you have to make this decision, it seems to me anyway, that the smart decision is you deal him now or convince him to retire, or if he wants to retire, that's fine. But in terms of the Packers options, it's trade him now or find some way to rework this contract so that if he is going to play this year, that next year it's not so punitive. I just don't know how you do that, and how amenable to that Aaron Rodgers is. If you were advising the Packers, if Brian Gutekunst called you and said, Joel, what do you think we should do? What makes the most sense? You're in that room. What are you advising them?
Get in the time machine, go back to last February, and convince him to go to Denver. Honestly, that's what it is, because you're taking his huge base salary of $59.465 million, because that's what it's sitting on the books right now until the option's exercised. And basically, that's like a huge salary conversion. It's no different than you converting someone's salary for cap purposes, in a sense, with the option, because you're able to prorate the 58.3. He's got a minimum base salary. So there's no good way to work around it in the future. You can't really, unless he's going to give up money, he's not going to give up guaranteed money. That's why I don't think he retires, because who walks away from $59.5 million in guarantees? I know he's made $300 million in his career, and he talked about having generational wealth, but no athlete in their right mind has ever done that.
So I think that leaves the Packers in a position where the decision is now, and they have to trade him. That is just sort of where I have landed. There are Packer fans who said
what if he wants to stay? Because you can't just he has no trade clause, but you can't trade him to a team he doesn't want to go to.
And he can make this ugly. He can come out publicly and say, I want to stay. And then the Packers look like the bad guy. You wage this battle in the media, right? Like that's the playbook if you want to stay.
And that's not beneath him. That's for sure. We saw that drama 2 years ago when he was hemming and hawing about potentially wanting out. And it
would have to be a mutually agreed upon.
Yes.
The old Seinfeld mutual breakup. That's what it would have to be. And I just don't know
how
you.
One location that I would, in particular, might interest him, reuniting with his old buddy Davante Adams in Las Vegas. I don't know.
And a coach he has a lot of respect for, Josh McDaniels.
Yeah. I don't know if they have designs on one of their former guys with a Patriot history in Tom Brady or Jimmy Garoppolo, but I'm sure he wouldn't mind linking back up with Davante Adams.
I think New York makes a lot of sense as well. That team looks like it's a quarterback away from being really, really scary. Young receivers, a defensive coach at head coach that
offense, because
right.
Forrest's brother just got fired, but he wouldn't have to learn a new offense.
But Nathaniel Hackett's available. Aaron Rodgers loves Nathaniel Hackett. Bring Nathaniel Hackett in as your OC, and now you're cooking with gas. I think those two options make a ton of sense.
Yes, they do. They do.
And so I'm fascinated to see, like, if we find out in a week, Aaron Rodgers says, I want to stay, how does that change? Maybe we get that, the piece, the now they tell us piece 5 years from now, like, oh yeah, the Packers are ready to move on, and Aaron Rodgers came out publicly and pressured them and all that stuff. Like this, there's a lot of stuff at play here that I don't know. How do you think this plays out? What do you think the most likely end game in all of this is?
I think it all depends on him, because if he says he wants to stay, I expect it to be ugly, him to make it ugly. I don't consider, I know he said all options on the table. I don't consider retirement to be real, as I said before.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm just going to walk away from $59.5 million. It's fully guaranteed. If I'm him, I kind of want out, because if you look at the roster, you probably have a better chance in Oakland if Josh Jacobs, not Oakland, Las Vegas. If Josh Jacobs,
I still call them the San Diego Chargers. Don't worry about it.
I do that too. Well, I sometimes call it. Until a few years ago, I called the Cardinals the St. Louis Cardinals. But anyway,
all right, I can't defend that one, Joel. I'm sorry.
if you look at the pieces, Josh Jacobs, you've got Adams, who's better than the young guys, even though Christian Watson's going to be very good. You got Max Crosby, who's a stud defensive end.
Yeah.
I don't know if Aaron Jones is going to be around, so your running back situation, if he stays, may be a little different. Who knows about Bakhtiari, whether he's there or not? He's not on the field, and you have to do something with his cap number. It's so high. It's 31, it's a little over 31 million. So you ask him to take a pay cut, or do you restructure that again, kick the can down the road, or do you release him? So I kind of look at the window, and Green Bay may have missed the window, which was really the past couple of years. And the Raiders kept blowing all those double-digit leads. You have a better quarterback. They're still playing right now.
Yeah. I think that one makes sense. And maybe the sneaky one, Miami, if Tua is not going to, who knows if Tua continues.
That's a whole
to
can of worms with
right.
his concussion issues. But
can I ask you a broad salary cap question that I need someone to explain to me? So all of the reason I had to have you on, right, and the reason you had to write that piece is because these contracts, the accounting of them, it's shenanigans. It's fake money. It's like, this is not this contract this year. Like in the NBA, Kevin Durant's going to make $50 million or whatever it is this year, and it's going to count $50 million on the cap. That's life. In the NFL, that's not the case. How do we get to a place where that's what happens? Does it mean having to have guaranteed contracts? Like, how do you get to a world where if it costs $10 million this year in cash, it costs $10 million on the cap?
Yeah, well, that's part of it, because one, you don't have signing bonuses in the NBA because you have fully guaranteed contracts.
Right.
So you just have salary, and it counts. The salary is your cap number. In the NFL, we haven't gotten to the point where you have fully guaranteed contracts, and I think that's going to be a slow move to get owners to go there. We only have the one big one in Deshaun Watson, and guaranteed money from when the NFL cap was created. The only form was signing bonus initially. You had base salary guarantees start coming in during the early 2000s for the most part. But that's why you have your cash and your cap, and they're usually two different things unless you do what the Raiders were doing under Reggie McKenzie, where you did pay as you go, no signing bonus, you had guarantees, and your cap and cash were the same. But that's why you have dead money, because signing bonus gets prorated, and under the rules of the CBA, when you release someone, depending upon the timing of the release, the future year's proration will either hit the cap in the current year, or if it's after June 1, you only have to deal with the current year's proration in that year, and the following year you have to deal with the future year's hitting the cap. So that's the reason. And then when you do a structure like this, where you have multiple sets of proration, if you're getting rid of the guy, you're going to have a problem.
So last thing here, I heard you on a podcast a couple of years ago. I think this was 2018, maybe even before that. I think it was spring 2018. And you were talking about the possibility of someone like Aaron Rodgers breaking the wheel, as it were, to pick a Game of Thrones metaphor, and just saying, I want to do like an NBA style contract, a 20% of the cap kind of thing. And every year it goes up and up and up. And at the time you talked about the potential pitfalls of that and why it couldn't make sense, or why it could, or how these things could change. Why do you think we haven't seen, at least based on the reporting that we've gotten, someone try something like that?
I think he broached it back then before he did the 30.
He dropped some hints before he signed that deal, like he wanted to do something different.
And I think Russell Wilson brought it up the following year.
That's right.
One thing that you're going to have a hard time getting an NFL team to do unless you have leverage is create a new precedent. Deshaun Watson had unusual leverage to get the fully guaranteed contract. Even though he was under contract for 4 years, I called him a quasi-free agent because he had multiple teams bidding for him to try to get him to waive his no-trade clause. So Cleveland was eliminated from the whole process, and they basically started throwing money at him. So the agent exploited that situation expertly to get a fully guaranteed contract. Getting a team to set a new precedent, particularly a league-wide precedent, teams don't like to set a new precedent within themselves, but a league-wide precedent, you better have a lot of leverage, and you're going to have to be on the verge of free agency. It's not going to be an extension situation. You're going to have to basically do what Kirk Cousins did and play through 2 franchise tags, and most quarterbacks aren't willing to do that and do the extension. And get to the open market, you get in a bidding situation, then you'll be able to demand something that you wouldn't otherwise. Which is
a version of the situation we saw Deshaun Watson in. Obviously, the off the field stuff and the sexual assault allegations make, I think, what the Browns did even uglier. And it's unfortunate that the NFL owners were not mad that they did that. They were mad that they fully guaranteed the contract. But
well, it was also the fact that the voiding of guarantees and forfeiture exempted out any pre-existing conduct. That was the part that I think most of the public was like, well, wait a minute. It's full guaranteeing the contract is one thing, but now the guarantees aren't going to void because of all these sexual assault allegations, and you can't recoup money like you ordinarily would if there's a breach or suspension.
Yeah, that is a situation that was unprecedented. Hopefully, we never are in a situation like that ever.
I give the agent a lot of credit for exploiting it for what it is. He did his job, so you can say what you want, but the agent did what he was supposed to do under the circumstances. Played the three teams off against each other and got the one that was desperate because they'd been eliminated to do something nobody saw coming.
Yeah. All right, Joel, I appreciate your time. I'm glad that we did not need an hour for you to explain this to me, but I did need you to explain it to me. So thank you so much for doing that. I'm sure a lot of people
I'm sure the article's confusing to people, but I tried to simplify it.
No, I would say if you were confused just hearing it, go read the article, because I actually think seeing the numbers make it make sense to you in a way that maybe just hearing it doesn't. So go check out the article. It's on CBS Sports. You can follow Joel on Twitter at Corry Joel. Joel, I appreciate your time. Thanks to Joel for joining the show. Great to talk to him. Thank you so much, Joel, for helping me through that. I knew what the numbers were. I did not understand how they worked. And I think he provided a lot of context and insight and nuance into all of that. So that was really useful. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends from every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college football. When that comes back around, basketball, soccer, golf. If you love sports, you're going to love BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to get all of your betting info. Head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Today, bringing you the local insights you love to the national spotlight with daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. All right, we are back next week, normal schedule, and a lot of fun stuff to get you ready for. We got Super Wild Card Weekend, the divisional round, NFC Championship game, AFC Championship game, Super Bowl. I'm going to be in Arizona for Super Bowl week. So we had a lot of fun last year on Radio Row with all of the great interviews that we were able to get while we were there. And I'll be bringing you a ton of those again this year. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, we do that on our Locked On Packers YouTube page, so you can stay Locked On Packers.